4 players who started that match will go head-to-head at club level in Italy this upcoming weekend. The big one in Serie A. AC Milan will host Juventus on Saturday. You've got Pulisic and Musah on one side, McKennie and Weah on the other. Should be an American orgy in this one.
It makes me feel good. It makes me feel good that...
As the man who started this all.
No, but it does make me feel good as an older guy. And, thinking back to... You're not lonely. That's not the right word. But you were kind of on an island as an American back then. And it would never even have... I could never even have fathomed walking on the field and having teammates that were American and looking across the field and having multiple players that were also American. It's just if it comes to pass, it would be a wonderful thing. It's cool to see. From a practical perspective, Milan have to get their ass in gear and get some points here. And Juventus and Weston McKennie and company are not going to give it to them by any stretch of the imagination.
I've said this before. You are to Americans in Serie A what Dr. Dre is to West Coast hip hop, the grandfather of it all. So
OG. Do they call them OGs? Is that what they call them now?
Exactly.
Okay, I'll take that. I'm good with that.
Incidentally, Vlahovic is a doubt. He picked up an injury for Serbia during this last window. And so there's talk in the Italian media that Timmy Weah might start at center forward if Vlahovic can't go.
Okay. Look, I want you playing, and I still prefer Tim Weah on the wing. And as a matter of fact, I prefer him on the right wing. I think he's been the most consistent and most dangerous player. I think he does things that others do. And even as good as Christian Pulisic is, he plays the wing position in a very different way and puts people on their heels. I'm not saying Christian Pulisic doesn't do it, but he is a straight out type of winger for me. I'm not saying he can't play in the mid, up top. And if that's what's going to happen, he'll figure out ways to be dangerous. But I still like him over there on the right-hand side for the national team at the very least.
Vlahovic did give an interview in which he seemed to take some shots at Juve boss Thiago Motta. Sean Sullivan, Bologna fan, is still bitter at Motta for leaving Bologna for Juventus. That's the only reason he included this in the rundown today. He revels in any kind of Motta turmoil at Juventus. In the Bundesliga, Borussia Dortmund, who are struggling, a lot of pressure on Nuri Sahin, they will host Freiburg. Big news is Gio Reyna could be in the matchday squad for this one. He has resumed training. He's been out with a groin injury. He hasn't played since August. He's only played a total of 9 minutes this season, but Gio Reyna could be back in our lives.
All right, really? It's fool me once, all that kind of stuff. I hope that he is physically able to train on a consistent basis. I hope that he is physically able to help Dortmund. As we look at it in the context of the men's national team and his potential return to the national team and where he fits, I think Pochettino certainly looks at him as a quality player. But I also don't think that Pochettino is just going to gift him a starting position. And as time goes on, things change. And the realities of what Pochettino has at his disposal change. And I think we have to contemplate, as good as he is and as good as we all think that he could be, I'm talking about Gio Reyna, there is a scenario where he comes in and he's a substitute for the U.S. men's national team. But if he isn't a substitute, where does he play? Whose position does he take? When the likes of Tanner Tessman and others are coming in and, making an impact and making a case for themselves, when, obviously Christian Pulisic is going to continue on, and does he play in a more 10 type of position? Does he play in a more wide position? And obviously he plays a wide position very, very different. These are good problems to have for Pochettino, champagne problems. But the reality is that when all is said and done, we might be right back to where we were actually in the previous cycle with Greg, when it really counted, where you look down the bench and there is Gio Reyna. And hopefully it goes better than it did last time.
In France, Monaco will host Brest. Frodeline Balogun has been out with a dislocated shoulder. It's unclear what his status is. I've read conflicting reports as to how close he is to coming back, but I've seen a lot of conversation the last couple of days about the Pepe-Balogun dynamic. Pepe scoring in both games in this window. We know Balogun was the starter under Berhalter, and to be fair, played well in the Copa America. I thought he was one of the few bright spots for the U.S. in that tournament, but do you think it's fair to say that Pepe has moved ahead of him the next time the U.S. has a game, and if they're both fit and available, that based on what Pepe did in this window, that it would be Pepe getting the nod ahead of Balogun?
I think obviously goals trump everything. And I think there's a lot of attention on Pepe because not only did he score, but he scored in both games. I also think that Pochettino is realistic, seeing the opposition. And actually I think all of us are realistic. And if Flo Balogun had started both of these games, the away game in Jamaica and the home game here against Jamaica, I don't think anybody would have been surprised if he scored a goal in each of those games because he's that good. And more importantly, the quality or the lack of quality of the competition and the opportunities that were created. That's not to take anything away from Pepe because I love the fact that he has now put pressure on Balogun or anybody else. But I still think it's wide open when it comes to the striker position. And I'm not ready to anoint Pepe as the new king and the new starter of this team yet. I still think it's going to be wide open, and a lot of it will depend on who they're playing. And it's one thing to score against Jamaica. It's another thing if you find a way to score even coming up if the U.S. makes it to the final against Mexico in the final of a Nations League. That's a different type of level, and that's a different type of rising to the occasion.
I do want to correct myself. I said we were heading to France. You know, Monaco is a principality. It's technically not a part of France, but it is Ligue 1, so that's what I should have said.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure everybody was up in arms in their car and on their jogs.
Incidentally, PSV face Groningen this upcoming weekend. So Ricardo Pepi facing his former club, where he had a successful loan spell with them. Staying in the injured center forward theme, in the championship this upcoming weekend, West Brom will host Norwich. We know Josh Sargent is out the rest of 2024. He had groin surgery. A name we haven't mentioned in a while on this podcast is Daryl Dike.
Wow.
He tore his ACL in February, was set to come back, and then late last month he had a setback. He picked up a hamstring injury, and he's going to be out a few weeks. That's a guy that once upon a time, I know Rob Stone was very high on and thought he was the solution there. I mean, is there a world where between now and 2026, Daryl Dike works his way into this conversation?
I mean, if his body holds up, and the reason I say that there is a possibility is because I do think that the competition continues. And if you come along and you're able to give something different, a different look. That's why Brandon Vasquez, who I know he got on the field, actually should have finished his chances, and that's a problem that he's not. But still, he gives a different look to Pochettino. And we've seen already that Pochettino, and he even said it in his post-game press conference, that he wants to provide different looks, and he wants to get his team thinking about it, but also the opposition thinking about, hey, they got a lot of different options. And Daryl Dike, in the same way that Brandon Vasquez, I think they're very different types of players. And I'm not saying it's a starting position, but yes, that's a long way of saying yes. If Dike is healthy, I mean, he is, from a physical perspective, and I think he's a really smart player too, he gives us a different look, and that's a good thing.
And to end this Yanks Abroad rip on a happier note, in the Premier League, Bournemouth will host Brighton. Tyler Adams, you might recall, made his first start of the season last time out against Brentford. I expect him to start this one as well.
All right, knock on wood for all of these players. You know, when it comes to Gio and Tyler Adams, for that matter, Tyler's a little different because I think if Tyler Adams is 100%, I think he is absolutely walking into the U.S. men's national team lineup. Where he goes, I mean, again, these are good problems to have, but so far so good in terms of his comeback.
You think about it, how well the U.S. played, particularly in the first half on Monday night, and then you think about the players that were missing, like Tyler Adams, Balogun, Gio Reyna, so it does speak to the depth.
Yep. And he'll, Pochettino will have to figure out. It would be wonderful. I know it's pie in the sky type of stuff. If at one point in the upcoming windows, everybody that we are talking about is healthy. Never really happens like that. But can you imagine if he had to look out and pick that 11, let's say for a final against Mexico of the Nations League, and what that would ultimately look like? We should be so lucky at that point, even if we're arguing and disagreeing. That's a good thing. We haven't been doing that much of late.
You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops twice a week right here on my very own YouTube page. The only way to stay up to date is to hit that subscribe button down below. Size the day, and see you soon.